Hi, I'm Tyler. This is 100 Days, 100 Movies, and today I'm doing Memento, which is a Christopher Nolan film, one of his early ones. I did Inception earlier on the list, and I stated that I wasn't a huge Nolan fan overall. I've only really seen a few of his, but every time it's always like way too flashy. Dark Knight was one of the standouts. That one was really good, and I actually really liked Memento, which is the one I'm doing today. And it's definitely changing my perspective on Nolan. I prefer this one way over Inception because Inception I feel like had a lot of flash, but the flash didn't like add to the story at all. This one is entirely driven by its gimmick, which is the fact that the guy has short-term memory loss. This movie was clearly based on like an actual guy who had like basically this where he couldn't form new memories. There was a guy, there's like a documentary on him on YouTube, I'm pretty sure, where basically he cannot form any new memories, but he still has muscle memory and he can still kind of remember things from before he had his injury that caused him to develop this really rare type of amnesia. Quick correction. I'm talking about Clive Wearing in this, which is basically a guy who can't make any new memories. He has integrated amnesia, which the movie is based on a short story called Memento Mori, which is based off of people like this who have integrated amnesia. The specific thing I was thinking about isn't necessarily directly influencing it, but it's one of the case studies that like kind of shows it. Henry Malaysian was also another guy who had this condition, and that's what the short story was kind of like referencing to, and that's what the movie is based on. So yeah, sorry about that. And in this movie, it's talking about another guy who has like a similar thing, where every like certain amount of time, it's like a fixed interval, he'll forget what happened in the previous interval. And in order to capture that feeling for the audience, they have it where the movie is played in backwards. So you start with the final scene. The final scene, he's shooting a guy, and you don't know who this guy is. You don't know why he's shooting him, but you get revealed information throughout the film. I don't want to spoil too much of it because you definitely should see this one. This is kind of an under the radar. I didn't really hear about it too much. I definitely heard of it, but I never like really knew what it was about or really knew who made it. I didn't know that this was a Nolan film, and it really was like an interesting one. It kind of has like two timelines going on. It's from the beginning of the story, which is playing in chronological order. So you have the beginning, which is like you keep cutting back to that where he's basically talking about the story about this guy, and he's it's like going forward, and then you start the very end with the other half, and that one's coming backwards where it'll play the first scene. So the first scene is the final scene, and then after it plays the beginning of the scene before it. So it's basically it'll play from here to there, and they'll play from here to there, and it'll, at the end of the scene that it plays next, it will line up with the beginning of the scene that played previously. I know that's really confusing, but that's what happens, and it's very interesting, and it confuses you at first, but then you start to understand it, so you know that the scene you're watching is going to end at the beginning of the scene you saw previously. And it's just a really interesting premise, and it is executed very well, and the whole mystery, the whole twist at the end, it is just plays really well into itself. I mean, the acting is also really good. Guy Pearce plays the main guy. Freaking Joe Pantalonia, which I saw him, I was like, oh, I recognize this guy from somewhere. Oh, he plays Ralph from The Sopranos, and I loved Ralph from The Sopranos. He's probably my favorite villain. And he plays Teddy, which is like kind of an antagonist. You'll see, it gets really confusing. And then Natalie, who's played by Carrie-Anne Moss, is in it too, which she's in The Matrix, and she's in a few other things. She was a pretty big actor at this time, and she was really good in it. I mean, you see she's like a really interesting character as well. Every character in this is very like morally gray, very like, I wouldn't say a single character in this movie is good at heart. Each one of them is pretty evil to some extent. But of course, the one that you can blame the less is Guy Pearce characters, because he's like basically like easily manipulated to do things. So yeah, that's Memento. I don't want to get too deep into it. My favorite scene is definitely when like I saw this clip on Instagram. That's how I like kind of heard about this. My favorite scene is when he's running, he's chasing after this guy. In the clip that you're watching, because it's played differently, you're watching him chasing after this guy, and he's going, wait, am I chasing this guy? And then, oh no, he's chasing me, as he's getting shot at by the guy he's quote unquote chasing. And as a viewer, you don't know what's happening, and it makes it just way more interesting, like who is the guy he's chasing, and then it's eventually revealed who this man is. So it's just overall, I really like it. I think it's really interesting. The only thing I would say like drags this movie down is that it is really hard to follow. It's kind of the point, but still, I just hit the thing. It is really hard to follow. I know that's the whole thing, that's the whole point of it, but still, it's like at points it's like kind of confusing just to be confusing, and I feel like I was able to follow it pretty well, but some of my friends I was watching it with, they definitely had a little bit of trouble. They were a little confused with like kind of what happened at the end, and I feel like that's not a bad thing. It's just the only thing that kind of drags this movie down. Also, the premise itself, besides the twist, it's kind of like a non-interesting plot line. I think they could have done something a little more interesting with it, but still, it doesn't matter. I think what happened is still really good. So yeah, I give it a solid 9 out of 10. It's so far my favorite Nolan film I've seen. I think it's really good. I love the premise. I think it's executed greatly, and it was a shocking, very fun movie. So yeah, go watch Memento. I really like this one. Get out of here. Also, kind of like to take away, someone in the previous video commented asking what my books were. Here they all are. At the left you have Fairy Tale. And then I got the 4th box set instead of the 3rd. I haven't read it in years, like I just have them up here. I kind of stopped reading manga a while ago, but I still have the remnants. Then I have a couple books. To the right is like Parasite, Black Clover. The entirety of like the first part of Chainsaw Man, I bought it while it was coming out. Then I got part 4, which is my favorite, well, second favorite JoJo part, behind Steel Ball Run. Then a bunch of One Punch Man, because I was reading it back like 5 years ago. 1 volume of Mob Psycho, because I thought I could get it. That's like a book about like cinematography. Then I got Dark Tower, the entire box set. The Stand, which is my favorite book. The 4th box set of Fairy Tale. The completed edition of Bone. The 2nd volume of a little like graphic novel I used to read when I was like 8 called Amulet. Then there's just like a couple like small like documentary books. I don't know what the word would be, like kind of biographies, or no, it would be a biography. It's about like Steven Spielberg and Quentin Tarantino. I think they're fan made. I haven't really read them. I got them for Christmas, so I think they're just kind of cool. And then the 1st volume of Hellboy. So yeah, that's all of the stuff on my bookshelf.